Welcome to the very first video of this series that I'm starting called Psychology 101. But before I start, I want to thank all my students because they are the ones who inspired me to do this. We are going through a very tough time, COVID-19, and we are all homebound. Because of this, we are facing some technological difficulties, and in spite of having several apps that help us, interact over over internet and everything, but still some of us are facing terrible problems. Sometimes there are voice problems or something like that, and I have to repeat a lot of things when I'm taking class. So I got this idea that why not I record everything and I post it on YouTube so that it's available to my students as well as anyone who's interested in. So being a teacher, I can understand what a tough time all the teachers are going through, and as well as all the students are going through. And I know classes are not happening. You are not going to go to your colleges or universities. You are missing your friends, but this is a good time to learn new things, and we are all improvising. So without wasting much time, let's get back to our topic today. Our topic today is contributions and advantages and disadvantages, and overall a discussion of cognitive behavior therapy. Now this course is particularly for students who are doing masters in clinical psychology, but those of you who are interested can always start and opt for it. The books that I'm referring to, I'll add them in the link. It is easily available in soft copy and hard copy as well. So if you have this book, great, you can go for that. And all these things are referred from the books. The notes that I make for my students, I'm referring that as from my own, and the reference will be added at the end of the video, and just follow the link. Okay, so first we'll be discussing the limitations of cognitive behavior therapy. Now, cognitive behavior therapy is amazing therapy as it is very well structured, and many therapists while practicing, they find it very organized, and you know what module to follow, what techniques you have to use. It is very structured in nature. But the main problem that some patients might feel, some clients might feel, that since it is very structured and time limited, those people who are looking forward something that can be more deeper in a sense and long term, they might feel a little bit disappointed. So I'm quoting from the book. It is saying people seeking unstructured and long-term treatment that focuses on development of insight and exploration of background may perceive this therapy to be not suitable for them. Unstructured in the sense, CBT can be very structured, as I was saying, organized. You know how long you are going to take the session, and you pre-organize the session. Like 10 minutes you review the previous session, time you allot to discuss the current session, and you focus on the current aim or target that you want to focus on, and then you move on to a review. So it is very organized. But those people who seek more unstructured techniques like psychodynamic or gestalt therapy, they might find it a lot structured in nature. Okay, so next hoche, it is not for everyone. Why it is said that it is not for everyone? Because CBT requires very active participation from the client's part. Whenever someone comes to us in a CBT session, not only that, you teach a person certain techniques, certain ways to understand the cognitive distortion someone is using. At the same time, assignments are given that the person is supposed to practice at home over a period of 1 week or 2 weeks. It depends on the therapist. So you have to be, the client have to be very active, actively participating. The person has to be very proactive, so the person does the assignments that are assigned or given to the person. So those people who are passive in nature, it may not be suitable for them, but the therapist has to focus on improving the motivation of the client. Next hoche, it is very present oriented, or relatively it's very brief treatment. For example, whenever a client with obsessive compulsive disorder comes to us, we plan that at least 14 to 12 sessions will be enough for the client. Of course, there is no hard and fast rule. I am saying this repeatedly, that there is no hard and fast rules. There may be less number of sessions or more, but on average there are many books that quote 12 to 14 sessions are required, and they are very organized as well, the sessions. So it is very present oriented. So while we focus on the symptoms the person is experiencing at the present moment, we don't give much time into what was in the background. How was the person's relationship with the parents? What are the factors that led up to this? What are the dynamic of the relationships? Those we don't focus on. So it is very reality oriented. Next is, it is very demanding for the clinicians. Now, why it is said that it is very demanding for the clinicians? Because the clinicians has to be very organized. Like, if a client is coming to you, you have to be very organized, and you have to know how you are going to plan the session, because there are a number of things that we focus on while we discuss, while we take up this mode of therapy. Saying all these things and keeping it all aside, discussing the limitations, I would always add, CBT is a very structured therapy. It's a very good and structured therapy, and all these limitations that we discuss can be easily handled with discussion with the client, improving on the motivations levels, etc. Another thing which I also felt, and again it is referred from the books, you can always go back to the books and refer. I will never suggest my students to only rely on the lectures. Read the books. Okay, the next one is that while we are focusing more on the cognitive distortions, the techniques, etc., sometimes we get more involved in discussing the cognitive distortions, etc. In doing that, we sometimes do not focus on developing a therapeutic alliance or developing a more a more empathetic relationship. That can happen. The therapist can shift. Sometimes it happens, they shift in their focus, but all these limitations that we discussed are, well, it can be a limitation, but if a therapist is conscious and focused on the work and careful, these limitations are not a big hurdle. Now we will discuss on the contributions and advantages of cognitive behavior therapy. Now, before we do that, we'll discuss what are the contributions. The biggest contribution of cognitive behavior therapy is that it initiated a lot of research. Like when we all have this need to establish something as scientific, and that's why we do research. And how do we know that a mode of therapy is more applicable for one disorder and not for this? So from the work of Aaron Beck, especially I'd really say Aaron Beck's work that emphasizes more on research and case formulation. So case formulation is also applied on many other therapies as well, but in CBT mode we see there are very structured case formulation. If we follow the modules and books by Aaron Beck, there are a number of books as well as they're in the market. They give a very structured idea of how to formulate the cases, which becomes very easy for the therapist to formulate the case and understand how the distortions are happening, how the distortions are resulting and forming, what are the schemas. It's very, very organized and structured. Not only that, cognitive behavior therapy and other researches that indicate, if you look into the other books or the researches or meta-analysis of other therapies, you will see that cognitive behavior therapy has more research publications have been done on this, which is very essential because it is very important to know for what therapies it can be applied, how can we expect the prognosis. Not only that, cognitive behavior therapy has given birth to different other type of new therapies, which is dialectical behavior therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, and there are many more. So not only in research area as well as in introducing new therapies, CBT has a big contribution. Now, discussing the assumptions or advantages that we have. The advantages of CBT is first that it is very time limited. Now I know we discussed that in limitation as well, then how can that be in advantages? Again, depending on the client, depending on the therapist, and depending on what your goal is, this can be a very good point as well as a negative point depending on the scenario. So since many time long-term therapy may not be applicable or feasible for some, so in those situations time limited therapies are very effective. Okay, another thing is that when we discuss cognitive behavior therapy, it can be applied to a wide range of people and for wide range of symptoms, for mood disorders, anxiety and personality disorders. So the application is quite large. At the same time, many people suggest that cognitive behavior therapy is non-intrusive. What it is meant by non-intrusive? Many times since we focus on the present, we do not focus much on the past. Many people can feel that it is not focusing much on the relationships, on the critical issues that one may not be comfortable to discuss. Next hoche, it is clear and logical and does not require the person to give intimate details. Third hoche, it is empowering and non-threatening. So many times the client does not have to discuss certain things the client is not comfortable with. So it can be non-threatening in a way that if you are not comfortable to discuss something, it is okay. The client or the therapist can shift back to some other techniques and focus on other problem. So the person doesn't feel that the person is being threatened or you have to divulge something that you are not comfortable with. So it can be very non-threatening and very non-intrusive. Then it draws a broad array of intervention. I mean, no other therapy I think has so many other types of intervention techniques that cognitive behavior therapy has. To not only from relaxation techniques to thought record, to understanding the distortion, labeling the distortions, and there are many more that we'll be also discussing in the next lecture in our series. So cognitive behavior therapy gives the client as well as the clinician a freedom to use number of other techniques that can be found suitable for one and maybe not the other. So there is a lot of freedom from both sides. Then it is of course structured and time limited, and it of course encourages research, which is amazing, because many times we need to see that a person who's undergoing certain therapy, how far that there is improvement, what is the prognosis. So these kind of research are very encouraged from CBT, and you can find a lot of interesting research in Google Scholar and ResearchGate, and there are many other places where you can search for the meta-analysis. I would always suggest don't rely on the lectures as well. Do your own research, study, read the books. There is no shortcut methods, so take your time to study all these things. Then another thing, it is collaborative in nature. There is alliance between therapist and the client, and the follow-up can be planned, which will enable us to observe whether there is improvement in the client or if any other symptoms are coming up. So follow-ups are also organized and structured, keeping in mind the improvement and the symptoms of the client over a period of time. And the last one, it is that it revolves around immediate problems. Again, I know there are many things that we discussed in the limitations, and we are discussing the same points in the advantages as well, because it is always comes down to the one principle that depending on the scenario, depending on the clinician's preference and the client's preference, choose the therapy. One therapy is not better than the other. It only depends on how much time you can afford, how much energy you can give into the whole process, and yours as well as the clinician's preference. So one point can be a limitation in some scenario, but it can also be an advantage. This is for today so far. We'll be focusing more on what are the cognitive distortions, what are the types of cognitive distortions in our next lecture. And for more information, please follow the links, follow the references that I will add at the end of this lecture in the description below. And well, as all YouTubers say, don't forget to subscribe. More will be coming on. And if all of you are going through the same problem right now because of the COVID-19, my heart goes to you and all the students who are there, and anyone who's interested to know more about psychology and psychotherapy. I hope that you are well, your loved ones are well, and see you next time.